Hello, hello. I'm Daniel, like she said. I'm slightly disappointed. I was wishing for one of those wireless mics because I speak with my hands a lot. And my hands are going to be chained to this now, but it's okay. Actually, funny story. So I actually I do food prep for my work. So I have a knife all day. I'm cutting stuff up. And my boss will walk in and he'll talk to me, he'll do whatever. And I just don't skip a beat. I'm just talking to him, whatever. And I talk with my hands. So I'm talking to my hands, but I don't ever put the knife down. So I'm just talking with him with this 12-inch knife, just being like, oh yeah, man, it's over here. And for some reason, the minute I get a knife in my hand, my wrists get all flippy. So I'm just like, oh yeah, man. And I'm just waving a knife around. Terrifies my boss every time. It's okay. I haven't cut myself yet badly enough to do anything about it. Good to be back up here. It's been a while. Good to see y'all. So I am going to be wrapping up the book of Hebrews. So to give a little recap for the book of Hebrews, this is your cue to go in your Bible apps or go in your Bibles and open to the book of Hebrew. We're going to be in Hebrews 11 and 12. Okay? So the book of Hebrews, to give a little recap, it is a book of letters. We're not exactly sure who wrote it. Some people think it's Paul, but it is a book of letters to early churches. And is in addressing issues that they have between people being unfaithful, people around them worshiping other gods. But this book, it does a really important thing, and it sets the importance of who Jesus is. It actually sets a new model of faith for them. So Hebrews is set not too long after the time that Jesus died. And I don't know if y'all know, even people who were back in Jesus' day and witnessed him be crucified or heard about this good news, maybe saw a miracle, they weren't sold on this whole Jesus thing. Or some people who even did see it and they believed that you needed to sacrifice animals. They didn't believe that Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice. So Hebrews does a good job of, the importance of it is that it sets up who Jesus is. It lets them know that, hey, we don't need to sacrifice anything anymore. And it lets them know that, hey, Jesus is the real deal. So be known. So we're going to start in Hebrews 11, like I said. And this letter specifically brings up, he writes all of these specific letters to churches. And then now he has these last 3 chapters, which he kind of uses to kind of tie it all together. And so one of the things he brings up is people of past faith, people who have a great faith, people who have shown extraordinary feats of faith. It's assumed that all these people have a pretty good knowledge of their ancestors because he brings up a lot of them. So, for example, he brings up Noah in the flood. Noah had great faith, for God told him to build this ark. All the people made fun of him, and he built it, and hey, the floods came. Or Abraham, who he promised the promised land. Abraham wandered in the wilderness, not knowing exactly where to go, and he had faith in God to lead him there. Or Sarah, who in an extremely old age, people told her that she would never conceive. Again, she was past her time, and she was able to conceive another child. So Hebrews, I better see heads looking down, verse 13. You ready? So in Hebrews verse 13, all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers here on earth. Jump one more to 15. If they had been thinking of the country that they had left, they would have had the opportunity to return. So it's talking about these titans of faith. These titans of faith recognized that they were strangers here on earth. They recognized that as followers of God, that they were set apart from all the others. That if they followed God, that God had called them to different things. God had called them to be a stranger here on earth. I don't know how many of y'all have felt like a stranger or an outsider before. That's pretty much my entire life. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. But that's pretty much my entire life. I don't know if some of y'all know me. Haven't been here my entire life. I moved here in middle school, and so I moved around a lot. I think the number is 14 times. I've been alive on this earth for 20 years, and I moved 14 times. So my life has been filled with being an outsider in places. And one of the biggest things when I came to Arizona was that, hey, we are going to be here for a few years. I got that guarantee from my parents. They're like, hey, we are going to be here for years so you can make friends here. So I was so excited, and it was a relief. So I'm a big sports guy. If you can't tell, I wear athletic shorts year-round, including in winter. I'm a big athletics guy, so athletics was kind of that plug-in for me to friends. So when I got into high school, I started playing high school football, and this was my chance, man. I mean, I had met some of these guys in middle school, but high school is really where you want to make or break it. And it was cool. Obviously there's some awkward things of, moving, getting to know people, and these kids had been friends for years and stuff, played Pee Wee football together, and I had just showed up these last 2 years. And I was super excited because this is the first time that you really get to spend a ton of time with all of these kids. So I spent 4 summers in a row. I spent all four of my summers in high school doing football weightlifting. So you'd wake up, you'd go weightlift, and then for 3 weeks, they let kids get used to it, and then they'd be like, okay, 2-a-days. And you'd be like, you can practice twice in one day? Coach's like, yep. So then you show up twice a day. So I'm spending so much time with these kids, and I'm hoping to go closer and closer to them, but really what happened is that I was treated more like an outsider, and it felt like the more time I spent with them, the more that they hated me and pushed me to the edge. I was not welcomed at all. And even more and more as I hear my coaches talking hey, you need to encourage others, you need to hold them accountable, you need to whatever, I would do that. And, it's a lot of the morals the church teaches here too, of God teaches for us to hold each other accountable. But kids hated me. That's not putting it lightly. The kids hated me. I literally had a kid before in practice. We're in the locker room, everybody's rushing out to practice, and it's just me and him left, and I'm trying to find my little belt. It's that big. Somehow it's the first thing you lose every single day. I don't know how. And we're about to rush out, and I was asking this kid, hey man, can I borrow the extra one that you have? And he stared me in the face and he said, nobody likes you here. I don't know why you keep showing up. People hate you. Go home. And I was like, I really didn't know what to say. It crushed me. These are kids who I'd spent my last 4 years with, through summers, after school, and then once football's done, I go run track with these kids too. And I hadn't hung out a single time outside of a class. I hadn't hung out a single time outside of a practice. Really, I was an outsider. And what really stung the most was the fact that this was a place that I was supposed to be, it was supposed to be a home for me. I was supposed to feel at home with these people in this team, and yet I felt like a stranger. And that hurts, and I don't know if some of you guys can relate with that pain, but it is a very specific pain that hurts. And this is kind of what God is saying for these titans of faith, for these people who did great things, for these Noah who's man, that guy's so cool, he built a massive boat, I want to have his woodworking skills, or Abraham, have his leadership ability, he must have just rocked it. No. These people were strangers to the people around them. And it's hard. It is so hard. What was super difficult for me is because I had a really big divide here. I could choose to keep going the path that I know, what I was learning at church. Or what I could choose the other path is go on my worldly desires here. Be a citizen of this earth. So over here, being a citizen of this earth, I could do all the things that I know weren't right. Get social media when my parents told me I wasn't allowed to have it. I could start cursing because, that's super cool. Everybody loves hearing kids curse. I could choose to listen to explicit music all the time, which I very much was not allowed to listen to until very recently. Or I could do what God has called me to do over here. I can be the brother that people needed. I could hold people accountable, and I could be there for them. Thankfully, good God was looking out for me, gave me Daniel Hendrickson in the front row. Love Dan. God gave me a dude with the same name that I now am able to call my brother, and he gave me somebody. But still, I felt like a stranger. And here's what I want you to hear, is in these moments when we feel like strangers, God calls us to be a citizen of his kingdom. I don't know if you guys know, but God says that he's built a kingdom for us, that we are not citizens of here on earth, that we are citizens of his heavenly kingdom. And that every time that we sit over here and obey these worldly desires, we crush that witness that we have to others. And it's such a hard temptation, but here's what I want you to know. There's pain and there's hurt and there's sin on this earth, and it sucks. But we can make the most of it. We can make the most of our time here by remembering that this earth is not our home. That social media, getting that social media early, cursing and all that, this is not our home. We can make the most of our time if you remember this is not our home and we are not citizens of here. So I want to go to these next few verses in Hebrews. Jump to the end. Hebrews 11. I should see heads going to Bibles again. Hebrews 11:39. Middle school boys, 3 of y'all are staring at me. Bibles, thank you. We're going to do Hebrews chapter 11, verse 39. They were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised. Chapter 12. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders us and the sin that so easily entangles us. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of God, at the right hand of the throne of God. So the writer here is letting us know that there is a great cloud of witnesses. I got a little confused when I read this the first time, so I want to clarify. When he's saying we have a great cloud of witnesses before us, he is not saying that we have a ton of people that we are to be a good witness of who God is to, although that is true. What he is saying is that you guys remember just a few minutes ago when I talked about those titans of faith, those people who showed extremely great faith, Noah and Abraham and Sarah. They are the witnesses that are cheering us on. The best way I've heard this explained. So, track. Who here has run track before? Okay, decent amount. More of you should run track. It's awesome. I did it in college. I suck now, but it's okay. It's fun to say I'm a washed-up college athlete now. So I want you to imagine this. You walk into a massive stadium, and it is just you. And you're walking down, and there's others lined up with you, but I want you to think about if you were to look around this whole stadium, all of these greats of the Bible that you hear, Paul, Abraham, Isaac, the apostles, Jesus, God, they're all around us. This cloud of witnesses who have been here before us and showed great faith, they're cheering you on. So when you're stepping up to that line, people are there cheering you on. These great cloud of witnesses are here for you. And these people are a great example of running the race with endurance. I don't know if y'all have heard that term, but running this race with endurance. God calls us, he says, not only are you going to be strangers in this earth, we can be over there, we can be worldly, but no, I call you to be strangers here on earth because you are not to this kingdom. I call you to run with endurance. I know it is going to be hard. I know it is going to be difficult. I know it is going to be painful, but I call you to run with perseverance, to know that this kingdom is not yours, to know that there's better things ahead of you. Honestly, I love all these examples from the Bible. They're really good to look back on. I have a really good friend, who really connects with Job. The book of Job, he loves Job. He actually got a tattoo of it, and that's one thing that really connects with him. But for me, my example for who is my great witness is honestly my dad. As you get older, guys, you'll realize how tough your parents are and the hard things they've had to go through. My dad, for those of you who do not know, he's a super great guy, and everybody knows him as a super fun, lighthearted guy who is kind. My dad has taught me patience, and my dad has taught me kindness to a level that I've just never seen else before. But my dad has had an extremely hard walk with Christ. Him and my mom have had a very tough marriage. They have almost divorced about 2 or 3 times. They've separated a few different times. There was times in there where we had to live 5 people and a cat in a 1-bedroom apartment because that's what we needed to do to give each other space. And my dad has run this race with endurance, the most endurance that I've ever seen somebody. But I love my dad, and he's the person who I look to. He's the person who I call. He's the person who I text. My dad, listen, is not perfect. He's had his struggles with gambling, with porn, with all sorts of things, but he's running the race with endurance. And I want to let you know that it's okay to trip and stumble. There is this picture of the champion, ingrained in my head, coming across the finish line, doing their little dip, and they look great. All their muscles look amazing, and there's not a bead of sweat on them. And that is not how this race is. You will get through this finish line whenever God calls you to go home to heaven one day, or if Jesus comes back early. And you will have your knees scraped. You will have your arms battered and torn up. You will have missing digits. You will have a tough time because we're called to run this race with endurance. Not beauty, not grace, but with endurance. Okay, y'all ready for a fun fact? These are my favorite things. I love fun facts so much. If you ever want an animal fun fact, come give me your favorite animal. I'll give you one like right away. Fun fact. Okay, so it says right up here, back in verse 12:1, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders us and the sin that so easily entangles us. So the language they use here, a lot of people like, let us throw off everything that hinders us and sin that so easily entangles. Let us throw off everything that hinders us. So back in the day, don't know if you know, running has been around for a really long time. It was one of the original sports. So back in the day when they ran, they would have these stadiums, these coliseums, all sorts of things. And people would be gathered to watch them. And these runners would come into the stadium, and they'd come in with their robes, and they would have these bright, colorful robes dyed in all sorts of things, and they'd come in, and they'd be the coolest guys. They'd be like, thank you guys, I'm about to run so much. I'm about to take like 30 minutes to run from here to there because they sucked back then. And they would come in, and right before they started, they would take all of their clothes off. They were literally ran naked. Fun fact that I ran through over this, it was hilarious. But that's why they use this language of throwing everything off. Because to them, to run a race, you needed nothing to hinder you. They believed that having any of those clothes on would hinder you. We now know, hey, you should not be running with your clothes off, okay? Keep your clothes on, especially at camp, especially at pools and oceans at camp. You guys got me? Everybody, approve the bathing suits only. But that's a fun fact. Be careful where you share that. So we're going to go back to Hebrews. Heads on Bibles now. Hebrews 12, verses 7, and then we're jumped to 10 and 11. It is discipline you have to endure. God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their father? I want to take a pause here before I finish the verses. So that's a pretty strong verse. God is asking us, God is telling us we're strangers, God is telling us we need to endure, and then God is telling us that it is discipline that you have to endure. And then God's treating us as his children. And are you even God's child if you aren't disciplined? And I want you to hear this. God does discipline. Discipline is a good thing. Who has heard the phrase, spare the rod, spoil the child? It is a southern thing that I love. I didn't understand it for years, but now I understand it. So it is saying, if you spare the child discipline, you spoil the child. I don't know if any of y'all ever gone to a grandparent's house and they give you everything you want, and they give you treats, and they give you everything. And man, I would throw up almost every time I went to my grandmother's house because I would eat so much candy. I would eat so much candy. I don't think you understand. I still eat so much candy. Lance and Mary all get their favorite candies and stuff because they can be adults and like ration themselves, and they have to like hide it from me in the house and make sure I can't find it. But yeah. So what God is saying here is that if we are really God's children, if God is the Father and we are his children, that he is going to discipline us. But it is out of love. It's one thing that people get twisted all the time, that if you love somebody, you would not say something to hurt them. You would not say something to go against what they say. You would not say something that could possibly hurt their feelings. That is fake love. That is not love at all. I had a college coach, and he said, if your friends don't tell you the truth, they are not your friends. And that is the truth. God is going to discipline us because he loves us, and he has called us to greater. Let's jump back in, verses 10 and 11. They disciplined us for a little while, as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good, in order that we may share his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. We're called by God to be disciplined, and we're pushed to have discipline. God loves us, so he disciplines us. He calls us to a harder life. Now, I don't know about y'all. This is an easy life to live over here. This is a really easy life to live. I just indulge in anything I want. Any desire that I have is an easy thing. You meet it and you do it. This is a harder life to live. God has called us to a hard life, y'all. It is not easy, but God has called us out of love because he knows what is best for you. God will shape you into the person that you were made to be. I don't know if you've heard it, but God made you special, and he
loves you very much.
Has nobody watched VeggieTales? Okay, God made you special, and
Loves you very much.
those are some words that you should take to heart, because God did make you special, and he's going to shape you into that person that he made you to be, against your will, or you can do it willingly. And so God has called us to this discipline. And it is not an easy life, and he 100% knows it. And that's why he says, hey, we have these witnesses before us. We have these people who are a great cloud of witnesses cheering you on. I gave you my son. I gave you my one and only son to be a witness to you of how to live this life. Hey, I know you won't be able to live like he did. He was perfect in every way. But look to him as the goal. Look to him for endurance to run this life when you're facing temptation, when you're facing harsh words from others, when you're facing these trials. Look to his son, Jesus. God calls us to live greater. God calls us to live better. God calls us to live discipline. So now, this is for the middle school boys. If you did not listen to a single word that I said, when I ask you the synopsis of this lesson, this is what you need to say, okay? We are strangers here on earth, and we are called to not live by worldly desires. We are strangers who are called to not live by our worldly desires. Our kingdom is not here. We do not live here. We are encouraged to endure, to hunker down, to say, you know what? I know this race is going to be difficult. I know I'm going to scrape my knees. I know I'm going to do some terrible things. Heck, I'm probably going to run the other direction most days. But God, you've called me to endure this hard life, and we should run it. He's calling you to throw off, to tear off your colorful robes, to tear off all those things that are holding you back, all of those bad friends that you have that encourage you to do those things you know you should not, all of those social medias that take up all your time and all they do is cloud your mind for judgment from others and judgment from others and looking at things you shouldn't. Or maybe it's, sexually explicit images. Maybe it's videos you shouldn't be looking up. Maybe it's porn, all sorts of things. He calls us to throw it off. He says, I know you are going to face it, but I call you to throw it off and run the race with endurance and to be disciplined, to show God's love and grace to others through discipline. I don't know about y'all. It is not easy to love everybody. It is not easy to have grace with everybody. But God calls us to be disciplined in it. God calls us to better. See, if you know this world isn't our home, it changes how we wait for Jesus. If you know this world is not our home, it changes how we wait for Jesus. If you know Christ and you've accepted him in your heart, the fact that you believe that Jesus is coming back, the fact that you have faith that Jesus is coming back, changes how you should wait. And if you have not accepted Jesus, maybe you don't believe in him at all, maybe you do believe he existed, but your faith is not in Jesus, I encourage you to put your faith in Jesus. And I need to let you know that it's not going to be the easy life, but it is going to be a better life. I can assure you that. And I'm sure your leaders would love to talk to you about that more if you have things laying on your heart. And let's pray.